Tyron Ford Everett. And first place is Hannah Park. The winning entries to the middle school writing contest are third place, Caleb Brown, second place, Jasmine DeWitt, and first place, Jameson Beck. Congratulations to all of you. Thank you.
You're muted, son.
Thank you very much, Amy, for your continued support of Holocaust education and awareness. I now would like to introduce Erez Kagnovich, a photographer, TEDx speaker, and a human behind the Humans of Tel Aviv, Humans of Israel, and the Humans of the Holocaust projects. Through his projects, Erez has helped bridge a cultural gap in society, both within and outside of Israel. Thank you, Erez, for being with us today, all the way from Israel.
Good morning from Tel Aviv. First of all, thank you so much for having me. And I'm going to share the screen so we can start speak about humans of the Holocaust. Okay, a little bit about myself. My name is Erez Kaganovich. I was born and raised in Haifa, Israel. I'm living in Tel Aviv for the past 10 years. I'm a photographer and a storyteller, and I'm the human behind the Humans of Tel Aviv, Humans of Israel, and Humans of the Holocaust projects. And I'm also a grandson of Holocaust survivors. And today I'm going to speak with you about why did I even started the projects of Humans of the Holocaust and Humans of Tel Aviv, and I'm going to speak about the memory of the Holocaust. So let's start. So a little bit about myself. Why did I even start a project like Humans of Tel Aviv and Humans of the Holocaust? Ever since I was a kid, I was mesmerized by different cultures and different languages. And I remembered that I told myself that when I will have enough time and enough money, I would probably hop on the first jet plane and we'll go and actually, explore the world. And this is exactly what I did. And the thing is that, while I was traveling in the world, most of the people didn't realize that I'm coming from Israel. And that is probably because of my accent, which I acquired after watching endless episodes of Seinfeld and Friends. And the thing is that, while you are traveling in the world, what will be the first question that probably, somebody will ask you? The first question will probably be, where are you coming from? And when I told people that I'm coming from Israel, you could actually see how their facial expressions started to change. You're coming from Israel. Isn't that place where people are getting exploded all the time? Or you're coming from Israel. Isn't it that place where you're actually at perpetual war with your neighbors? And I was really upset. And I was really angry that people have these misconceptions about the place that I'm coming from. And I remember that I told myself that, if I had the ability to actually bring those people back with me to Israel so they can see in their own eyes what Israel is all about, I don't know, maybe, just maybe I will be able to change those misconceptions. But I couldn't really do that back then. It's a problem to bring all those people, back to Israel. But what I really wanted to show was actually, the diversity and the multiculturalism and the vibrant civil society that we have in Israel. And, when you think about it, Israel is a very tiny place. It's the size of New Jersey. And the thing is that while you're walking in Tel Aviv, every 10 minutes, every time, you change, there's a change of scenery. And there's different culture, and there's a different vibe, and the different languages, and it's amazing. And this is exactly what I want to show. But the thing is that I couldn't really do that back then. But luckily enough, I stumbled upon a project called Humans of New York, and this amazing project was established almost 10 years ago. And the idea behind Humans of New York is that this guy from New York, Brandon Stanton, decided to tell the life stories of New Yorkers. And he was walking in the streets of New York and engaging total strangers and started to ask them questions about their personal lives and then uploaded it to social media. And when I saw that project, it was like a eureka moment for me because I realized this is exactly what I need to do if I want to tell the Israeli and Jewish story. So I opened a Google search page and I wrote Humans of Tel Aviv, and I was a little bit anxious because I didn't know if somebody else already understood the potential of creating a project like this. And I hit the search button. And when I saw that nobody else, opened a project like this, I said, well, I'm going to do this. But I promised myself that I'm going to show the good parts as well as the bad parts. I would love to show the complexity that we're living in Israel. And so I started the Humans of Tel Aviv project. And in Humans of Tel Aviv, I photographed more than 2,000 Israelis. And one of the biggest lessons that I learned in Humans of Tel Aviv is that if I want to convey my message, and if I want to better inform, better educate people about the place I'm coming from, it's not enough that you have a good picture, and it's not enough that you have a good story. You need to have some kind of a combination between the picture and the story. And when you think about it, today we are bombarded with so much information. There are so many apps, Google and Netflix and TikTok and YouTube and WhatsApp and Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat and Twitter. So it's really hard to get your message across the board because there is so much information flow. So you've got to make the story interesting. You've got to make something different in order that people will actually engage with your story and your pictures. Now, this is exactly what happened with this picture. I posted this picture on the International Memorial Day of the Holocaust, and it went viral. And now in Israel, this picture needs no introduction. Everybody in Israel knows about the Holocaust because we're living in a Jewish state. And from first grade, you're actually, you're hammered with Holocaust education. So you're familiar with this tattoo. Now, the thing is that this picture went viral because a lot of people from around the world, they had some kind of a dissonance between what they saw and what they understood. And in this picture, you can see the arms of the grandkids of Yosef Diamond, who decided to commemorate his memory and by actually tattooing his Auschwitz number on their wrists. And if you will take a closer examination, you will see there's a tiny diamond near the number because in German, diamond means diamond. And I've got, I published this picture on the International Memorial Day of the Holocaust a few years ago. And the thing is that I got a lot of messages from the Arab and Muslim world from people who told me, listen, this is the first time we ever heard about the Holocaust. And this is the first time we realized why the state of Israel was even established. And I was really moved. It was amazing because I realized that I have the ability to better inform and to better educate people about the history of the Jewish people and about Israel. And I understood that it's important to speak about the Holocaust, but I didn't realize the importance until a few years ago, 2, 3 years ago, when I stumbled upon this survey, this research that was published in the Washington Post. And that survey said that almost, 66% of young millennials never heard about the Holocaust. And 50% of those young millennials could not even name one ghetto or concentration camp. Now, those numbers, those findings, send a shiver down my spine because it means that 66% of young millennials in America don't know what Auschwitz is. And if they don't know what Auschwitz is, it means that they never heard about the Holocaust. And if they never heard about the Holocaust, it means that they are not familiar with the history and they cannot learn the valuable lessons that we should all learn about the Holocaust. But that was only one part of the problem. The other part of the problem was the fact that there was a spike in anti-Semitism all around the world and mainly in the United States. In 2019, there were approximately 2,000 anti-Semitic attacks in the United States alone. Now, when you think about it, this is a lethal combination because you have this ignorance about the Holocaust and you actually have this rise in anti-Semitism. And people won't, it's hard to fight anti-Semitism if you don't know the history and you don't know what blind hatred and you don't know what bigotry and you don't know what those things can actually cause. So, I could have been mad at those, young millennials for being so ignorant about the Holocaust, but I realized that it's not their fault. Because when I thought about it, I realized that, when I was their age, I didn't want to have any connection to the Holocaust whatsoever. And, I'm Jewish. I was born in a Jewish state. I grew up in the Israeli education system where you're hammered from first grade with Holocaust education. And the thing is that, my grandfathers were Holocaust survivors. And I was trying to think about, why did it, when I was their age, why they didn't want to have any connection to the Holocaust. And when you think about it, when I thought about it, I realized that, the Holocaust usually, it's always portrayed in black and white. It's, to see all the dead bodies, in the documentaries, and to see all the atrocities, it's hard, it's dark, it's gloomy, it's really hard to connect with. So maybe we're doing something wrong. And I realized that if I didn't want to have any connection to the Holocaust, why would say, somebody from, I don't know, Lexington, Kentucky, from the Midwest will want to learn about the Holocaust? So I was trying to think how I can actually, better inform and educate people. And I realized that in order to do so, the Holocaust doesn't have to be dark. It doesn't have to be gloomy. We don't have to show, all the atrocities. What we can do is that we can tell the story of the survivors in a human way, their human stories during the Holocaust. And we can do it, with a global message. And we can do it with a lot of hope. And we can do it with even a sense of humor. And this is the reason why I started the Humans of the Holocaust project. Now, speaking about humor, even in the darkest place on earth, you can find your sense of humor. In this picture, you can see Dougal Leitner, an Auschwitz survivor. And that was one of the first sentences that he told me when we first spoke. So we both realized that his picture has to be, joyful, and has to be optimistic, and has to be full of life. So when we decided to actually, to compose this picture, we came to the idea that he will actually hold a yellow balloon in the shape of the notorious yellow badge the Jews were compelled to wear during the Holocaust. And look at him. Look at Dougal. He's smiling, he's optimistic, he's actually embracing the symbol that actually turned him into a subhuman. But it's actually, retaking that symbol, turning it upside down on its head, and actually, it's a picture full of hope. And one of the main messages that Dougal had was that, it doesn't matter what is actually happening in your life, no matter what kind of hardship you're facing, if you will use your sense of humor, you will be able to actually find the resilience inside of you to actually overcome all difficulties in life. And if he was able to do that during the Holocaust, we can all do that in our own day-to-day life. And this is a very powerful message. This is something that, you don't have to be Jewish in order to engage with. And it's a global message. So it's one of the most interesting pictures that I took in this project. Now, it could be even about coexistence. Sometimes I fear that my story sounds so insane that people just won't believe me. This is a quotation of Laila Jabarin. And Laila Jabarin was born in Hungary in a concentration camp. And she spent the first 2 years of her life in a bunker with her family. And after she managed to survive the Holocaust, she and her family made Aliyah. They immigrated to Israel. And in the age of 15, she met Muhammad and she fell in love. It was puppy love. And she decided to marry him. And today she is living in Fahim. It's a big Arab city in the central district of Israel. And today she's the matriarch of this Palestinian Muslim clan. Now, the thing is that, Laila, we were sitting in her living room and we started speaking she told me about how, about her concerns about the rise in anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. And she spoke about what happened in Pittsburgh, in the Tree of Life synagogue, the mass shooting that happened there. And she spoke about what happened in Christchurch in 2019, the massacre in the two mosques in New Zealand. And she told me that in the bottom line, those people, the same people that actually pulled the trigger, both in Pittsburgh and in Christchurch, they were motivated from blind hatred, and they were motivated from bigotry, and from hate to other people. And she said that, in the bottom line, it doesn't matter if you're Jewish or a Muslim or a Christian, because in the bottom line, we are all God children. And she was willing to share her story and to share her background because she wanted to show there's a different way. There's a way of coexistence. And this is a global message. This is something that everybody can relate to. It's about the lessons that we should all learn from the Holocaust. Gideon Lev was born in Czechoslovakia, and in 1939 the Germans invaded Czechoslovakia, and in the age of 3 he became a refugee, and he actually managed to survive the Holocaust. And after he went to Dresdenstadt with his family, and after the war ended, he immigrated. He got this certificate, refugee certificate, and he moved to Brooklyn, New York. And he spent there a few years. And later on, he became once again a refugee, and he moved to Toronto, Canada. And only in 1956, he immigrated. He made Aliyah to Israel, where he actually felt as a bona fide citizen. But he told me that for him, today in the world, there are so many refugees. And there are people who are knocking on the doors of the United States, or who are knocking on the doors in Europe, or even in Israel. There are a lot of refugees and asylum seekers who are coming from South Sahara, coming from Eritrea, coming from South Sudan. And it told me that, it breaks his heart to see so many refugees that are actually, mistreated around the world. And he told me that, it's important, to never forget, and it's crucial to never forget and to always remember what happened in the Holocaust. But that is actually only one of the. This is only one part of the thing that we need to do. The other thing is that we have to learn the valuable lessons from the Holocaust, and we have to treat refugees, in a humane way, and we have to open our hearts, and we have to use our compassion, because he told me, from his own experience, life experience, he was a refugee, and he was knocking on doors all around the world until he came to Israel. So it's not only about the remembrance; it's also about the fact that we have to. We just have to. We have to. It's not only about the it's not only about to remember. It's about to actually to learn from the Holocaust, which is crucial. It's about the resilience of people. It's about the resilience of people who are actually, where you're actually in dire times. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but in 1939 there was this amazing research in the Warsaw Ghetto, and that research was about hunger. Because on the left side of the picture, you can see this is approximately 1,800 calories that an average person is supposed to eat every day. On the right side, you can see a potato, you can see a dry bread, and you can see soup. And that is approximately 180 calories. And that was the amount of calories the Jews were able to actually eat during while they were in the Warsaw Ghetto. And the amazing thing about this story is that Jewish physicians, Jewish doctors realized that, this is not sufficient for a human being to actually, to live. So they decided to conduct secret research about hunger, the hunger disease. And it's amazing because those physicians, those Jewish doctors knew that they will not survive the Holocaust. But still, they found the strength and they find the resilience inside of them to actually conduct a research, a medical research that you could not reproduce today ever. But they actually created, a research that the findings until today are helping humankind and are actually helping physicians and doctors all around the world to help people who suffer from hunger. And this is for prosperity. And it's amazing. It's amazing that they actually, during those, crazy times during the Holocaust, they had the vision of creating something so important for prosperity. It's about forgiveness. It's about Eva Cole Moses was a Holocaust survivor, and she was one of the 3,000 Mengele twins. And in 2018, there was this amazing, amazing interview she gave to BuzzFeed, who actually reached more than 500 million people from all across the world. And in that interview, she actually forgive. She spoke about her forgiveness to Mengele and to the Nazis. And the thing is, the most amazing thing is that in her philosophy, she decided to forgive Mengele because she realized that once she will forgive him, it showed that she has power over her life. And she said that actually, when she's forgiving, it gives her the ability to actually continue in her life, because when you're not forgiving, you're always holding a grudge, and you always have to rethink all the bad memories and all the atrocities. And she told me that her philosophy was that in order to continue with her life, she decided to forgive. And the thing is that, you can agree or you can disagree with Eva, but you cannot take away from her the fact that she actually managed to spark an amazing, to ignite an amazing spark about the Holocaust. And a lot of people who never heard about the Holocaust started to speak about the Holocaust all over the world. So, you can agree or disagree, but, you cannot take that away from her. And her forgiveness was she forgive her forgiveness was actually something personal. She didn't forgive in the name of the whole Jewish people. And that's an amazing story, and that is something that we should all think about. And this is exactly the stories that I'm looking for and searching for in humans of the Holocaust. Because in today's world, if we want to engage the next generation, we have to make them think. We have to make something that is a little bit different. We have to tell the story in a different way. Thank you so much.
I want to thank Erez for that terrific and that timely presentation. Now, I had the pleasure of watching his TEDx talk on the same subject, educating the next generation of the Holocaust, and I found it really meaning on so many levels. Some would say it was alarming because of the number of people he mentioned who live in ignorance, but as many of us, I was already familiar with those statistics. Some say it may have been controversial because of his new ideas about the Holocaust, but I can tell you as a former teacher, I, on the other hand, wholeheartedly agree with the idea that we must do whatever we need to do to educate our children according to the needs of the day. So I couldn't agree more. If my grade school teachers in the 1970s had taught me in the same fashion as school teachers had taught my father in the 1940s, I can tell you, and I think we'd all know, that the results would have been alarming. It was a different age. We all understand the process of change affects everything from technology to politics, and we must stay updated and evolve if we want to continue Holocaust education. There's no difference in the terms of the idea that we have to really bring it into the future. Now, not every idea that is new will work, and not every tried and true teaching style will need to be replaced. I think we just need to find the right mix of new and the already successful ideas for the new generation. We need to find the right mix, though, for every classroom, every tour, every YouTube video, because it's going to be different for everyone. It's not going to be easy. I can't imagine the task at hand, but it's going to require experts who are going to have to learn and create these new modes of teaching and then go out and teach it to others and train them. And when I was listening to this talk and I thought about the Holocaust, and I thought, what's a different way to talk about it? I thought about the country of Rwanda, because we've talked a lot about Rwanda through the years and the comparison with the genocide in Rwanda. But a lot of people don't realize that in 2019, the last full pre-pandemic year, 1.7 million people visited Rwanda as tourists. That's right, 1.7 million people visited Rwanda. Why? Because Rwanda is, by pretty much all the organization's agreement, the safest country in all of Africa. That's right, Rwanda is the safest country in Africa. And just to let you know how much the tourism was growing before the pandemic, in 2019, the number of tourists had spiked by 25%. That's right. So by now, there would have been probably over 2 million people a year visiting Rwanda. You know, it's not that easy to get there. So why are people visiting Rwanda? Well, one, the obvious is the mountain gorillas. If you go to Rwanda, it is the best place to see mountain gorillas in the world. They have it in Uganda, you can see it in the Congo, but those places aren't as safe and the gorillas are not, there's not as many of them. Think about Jane Goodall, her gorilla troop is in Rwanda. So I went to Rwanda to visit the gorillas. And while there, I just happened to visit the Kigali Memorial Center where I came to visit. And this was one of those poignant moments in my life as I'm visiting the center. I realized that I had visited 3 places on earth where the most terrible modern atrocities had occurred. I had visited Auschwitz, I visited the killing fields in Cambodia, and I had visited Rwanda. And I think one way to teach the Holocaust is not only to speak about the terrible things that happened in Rwanda, but how the Rwandans overcame those terrible things. I mean, this is a country that went to war with itself, and over just 10 weeks, 500,000 people were killed. So how did Rwanda go from the country of the genocide in the 1990s to becoming the safest place in Africa and a tourist destination only 25 years later? And if you go visit it, right when you get off the airplane, you can feel how safe and easy it is. It's an incredible chain of events. And they had to go, of course, through a terrible, terrible time to come to this point. So I agree completely with Erez. I think it's up to every generation to ensure that every next generation understands the true nature of contempt and how it can lead to genocide. The world changes, and I believe, as he does, that we have to ensure that Holocaust teaching will evolve so that every generation will come to know it. So thank you again, Erez, for that beautiful talk. I encourage everyone to view him on TEDx, or if this is recorded, invite your friends and family who aren't here tonight to listen to this, because it's really quite essential. Now it's my esteemed pleasure to introduce a truly wonderful community leader who is also my colleague and good friend, Rabbi Stephen Henkin from Congregation Agudat Achim.
Thank you, Rabbi Haas, and thank you, Erez, for your words and for your teaching as well. Before I take a moment here to recite the El Maleh Rachamim prayer and the Kaddish prayer in honor of those who were murdered in the Shoah, I want to take a moment for some perspective. In the past 13 months, as we've been dealing with the COVID pandemic, more than 555,000 people have died just from this virus in the United States. Many of us know at least one, if not more, of those 555,000. Worldwide, that number is a bit under 3 million. The scale of the tragedy, the number of lives lost, the amount of pain and hurt, the tumult that has been caused both in America and worldwide is staggering. And those 555,000 in America is not even 10% of the number of Jews who died in Europe during the Shoah. Even the worldwide COVID number is less than half of the number of Jews who were killed in Europe during that time. While the recency and enormity of the COVID pandemic still throws us off, especially because we're still in the middle of it, in sheer numbers, it still pales in comparison to the loss of 6 million of our Jewish brothers and sisters who were murdered 76 years ago or more. I've used before one of the more powerful explanations of the Kaddish prayer that I have learned. The prayer, as we all know, begins Yitgadal v'Yitkadash Shemei Rabbah. May God's great name be made great and be made holy. Why do we say these words when we mourn? Isn't God's name already great and holy? The answer is because, as individuals created B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God, each death is a reduction of God's presence in this world. As much as we pray for our own wholeness, we also pray that God is restored as well, as God mourns with us. And as we now keep in perspective the enormity of the Shoah compared to our own modern crisis, continue to hope and pray with God for healing and wholeness as we remember those 6 million individual Jews who were murdered in the Shoah. If you would like, I'd like to invite you to rise for the El Malei Rachamim prayer and then the Kaddish as well. El Malei Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Yitze Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei HaShechina, B'malot Kedoshim U'Tohorim, Kezohar Harakia Mazhirim, Lenishmor Kol Achienu B'nei Yisrael, Shenitbechu B'Shoah, Hanashim, Nashim V'Tahav, Shenechneku V'Shenisrafu V'Shenehergu, Shemasru Et Nafsham Al Kiddush Hashem, V'Gan Eden Tehe Menuchatam, Ana Ba'al Harachmim, Hastirem B'Seter Knafecha L'Olamim, Utror B'Tror HaChaim Et Nishmotehem, Adonai Hu Nechalatam. Yanuchu v'shalom al mishkavotehem, v'nomar Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the souls of our brethren who perished in the Shoah, men, women, and children of the house of Israel who were slaughtered, suffocated, and burned to ashes. May their memory endure and inspire deeds of charity and goodness in our lives. May their souls thus be bound up in the bond of life. May they rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. I would also now like to invite you to remain standing as we'll conclude with a mourner's Kaddish in their memory. We'll recite the what's known as the Holocaust Kaddish, or the Shoah Kaddish, in which we'll also incorporate some of the names of the concentration camps within the Kaddish. Yit Gadal, Auschwitz. Yit Kadash, Lodz. Shmei Rabbah, Ponar. Barma, Divra, Chirute. Babi Yar, V'yamlich Malchute, Meidanik, B'chayechon V'yomechon, Birkenau, U'v'chaye D'chol Beit Yisrael, Kavno, B'agala U'v'zman Kariv, Yanovska, V'yimru, Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevarach, Le'elam U'lamei Almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach, Theresienstadt, Yitpa'ar v'yitromam, Buchenwald, Yitnaseh v'yitadar, Treblinka, Yitale v'yitalal, Vilna, Shmei Dekudsha B'riachu, Bergen-Belsen. Leila, Mauthausen, in Kol Birchata V'Shirata, Dachau, Tushbechata V'Nechamata, Minsk, Damiran B'Alma, Warsaw, V'imru, Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya, Chaim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, V'imru, Amen. Se Shalom B'imromav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, V'imru, Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi Henkin. I was recently reading an article in the New York Times written by Bret Stephens that basically outlined what it meant for him to be Jewish. And he said it was a member of a religion that cherishes life and memory alike and believes that we live best and understand best when we remember well. So as we leave tonight, I want to thank all of our participants, Amy Hatch, all the students, the rabbis, and remember, never forget. So at this time, I'd like to invite Rabbi Slatus of Congregation B'nai B'rith Jacob for the benediction.
Thank you very much. Want to thank God Almighty for allowing us to survive this past year of the COVID and to be able to be here. And we reflect upon the meaning of this evening. The best way that we could honor the memory of those who perished in the Holocaust is to embrace the very meaning of being Jewish. We are really suffering from a spiritual Holocaust today. So many Jews who have lost their identity. They have no concept of Judaism. They do not affiliate. We have to look for ways to try to help them understand and gain knowledge about the show of the Holocaust. How can we reach them? What can we do? How can we make the memory of those who perished to make it into something which will be eternally lasting? I believe the answer is very simple: to embrace the spirituality, the magnificence of our heritage, the beauty and the depth of that which God gave us, his Torah, his guiding light for all of mankind, and especially for the Jewish people. To embrace all the traditions and the mitzvahs and the customs, to shower ourselves in the glory of God's divine word, giving meaning and purpose to each and every day. This way we will perpetuate the knowledge and also the feeling of the beauty of being Jewish, so that we should not have to come together and try to find ways in which we can ignite and inspire our youth, but rather our youth will be the ones who inspire the hearts of their fathers and the hearts of their mothers, as the prophets state. So we thank you, Almighty God, for allowing us to come together this evening. And may it be your will, and may it be an expression of your boundless compassion, that there should be an end to the hatred, there should be an end to the racism, there should be an end to the envy, there should be an end to the anti-Semitism. And may we join together next year in good health and peace. L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. And that concludes our program for the evening. Again, thank all of you for attending and appreciate you